That was awesome. Good morning, church. If this is your first time in a long time, welcome home. Or your first time at all, welcome home. All of that and the above. Hey, my name is Joe Barber. For those that don't know me, I'm the youth pastor here at Puget Sound Foursquare. Thank you. So I'm especially blessed and proud of all of the youth that have stood up here and performed or given testimony or served. There's some amazing youth here, which means that they're a reflection of the amazing support groups that they have here, parents, family, and friends. So thank you. Today, we're going to continue our series on family and heart, and ultimately with the goal of connecting to our mission as a church of being seen in the city. And remember the other part, love in action. So, how are we going to start this? Don't worry, I've got my frog too in case it just needs a squeak. So yeah, by the way, so I'm taking this, I got to see. So yeah, let me start over. All right, there we go. Okay, so most of you that might have seen me before, oh, look, he looks fancy. This is what you call the magic of a suit separate, otherwise known as a sports coat. Because when you take this thing off, then you're like, wait a minute, that's regular Joe. I've seen that guy before. There's another reason, though, that I'm taking off my jacket, and that's because I want to show you guys something. Some of you may have seen this and know. Some of you may not know and may have seen it. Some of you are like, what the heck's he talking about? Let me tell you. So I'm going to hold up my arm in the lights. Maybe you can see it, but there's this nice zipper that runs along my elbow. If I go on the side, there's a couple other dots. You might need to get closer. Some scars here, here, here. I've got a lot of scars. So I don't know if you can see it. You can come look at it later. I'll show you. You can touch it. When I show a scar, when somebody notices it, I'm wearing a t-shirt, standing in line somewhere, people inevitably are going to say, hey, what's that from? They want to know the story, right? I'm sure you want to know the story. And even if you don't, you're going to hear it because I've got the microphone. This is an example or a byproduct of when I fell off of a ladder. I don't remember the exact date. My wife's good at the exact dates, but say it was 18, 19 years ago, something like that. I was in a lot less good shape than I am now. Not that I'm in perfect shape, but I was definitely a different shape then. I had been painting the house, and there was one little spot up on the roof after we'd put everything away, and I was like, oh, dang, I missed it. Everything's put away. I've already changed into shorts, flip-flops, or whatever. I'm like, I'll just get it. So I bring the ladder. I climb up the ladder in my flip-flops and my, goofy-looking shape, and I reach as far as I can, and I start to slip, and down I go, and I fall, and I shatter my elbow. It doesn't come out of the skin. It's not going to get graphic. Inside, shatters, explodes. I end up having to have, ultimately, 3 different surgeries over about a year's time. Had to have radiation on my arm for some. It's insane, the amount of stuff. But here's the crazy part. The second surgery, I think it was the second one. I woke up from surgery, as one does, right? You go to sleep. Everything's one way, you wake up, and it's the next way. And I'm like, hey, my hand doesn't work. And I probably wasn't quite as calm as that. My wife probably remembers it a lot better. I'm pretty sure I was freaking out. Like, where's the doctor? My hand doesn't work. And when I say it doesn't work, you hold your hand out, and mine was just droopy. And I could close my fingers like this, but I couldn't open my hand. It just didn't work. I could spend forever telling you all the rest of what had to happen to get better, but that was insane. I saw the main surgeon who was like, I don't know what's going on. I saw follow-up surgeons. I saw nerve specialists and had nerve conduction studies done. And ultimately, it was told to me that there was nothing there. It was damaged. It probably wouldn't come back. If it did with micro surgeries, that it would take years and years and years to get use of my hand. And I was like, dang, that changed a lot of things. So we went through had people come and pray. We did a lot of different things to try and, just get good answers. And I remember, this was fun. I showed the first service this. Gives you an idea of what was going on. I remember I could take a bottle. I couldn't open my hand, but I could open my fingers, get a bottle in my hand, drink it or whatever. But then when I was done, I would walk over to the garbage can, and I would go like this. Well, my hand was kind of down like this. And I would be like, I'd be like, let go. And it just wouldn't. Just sit here. It's like, let go. And it wouldn't. So I had to open my fingers to get rid of it. The other thing I would do is I would try and see, I'd pick up my hand like this, let go, and it would fall back down. But I would do it over and over again. I almost was doing it out of habit, not even thinking about it. Well, we were praying. Nothing was changing. We're getting there. I don't know what life's going to look like. I'm trying to learn, by the way, learn how to write with my left hand, doing everything left-handed. And then one day I'm sitting there, and I do my little thing, and I realized, like, not even paying attention. Like, I felt like it got stuck for a second, like it gripped for a second. I'm going to try that again. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So I call my wife, Tammy, come in here. She comes in there, and I can hold it for a fraction of a second. Well, speed the story along, I'll tell you that by the doctor's appointment that was a couple of days later, I could hold it straight out like this for roughly 10 seconds. So the surgeon's coming. We were at that point where he's like, I'm going to refer, I just don't know what to do. And it was kind of, I don't even know why we're having this appointment. So we show up, and I'm kind of excited, but I'm being chill. And he comes in there, and he's kind of, walking in, all right, hey. And I said, I want to show you something. Put my arm out, hold my wrist up, and I hold it for 10 seconds. Drop it. And he looks at me and my wife, and he says, this is a miracle. I've been doing this a long time. This doesn't happen. And then he says, and I need you to know that I'm a believer, and I've been praying for you every day. This is truly a miracle. Right? So now that's the story of my scar and how God healed me. Now, if I wasn't up here and you asked me, I might tell you that it was the time that I ran in front of a runaway bus and saved an old lady and a baby and a cat from destruction, but you know the truth now. I'm going to put on my jacket so I'm fancy for the camera. Sorry, I'll get back in spot here. But the reason I tell you that story is because I have a scar. And everyone can see it when I don't have it hidden in a jacket, and it tells a story, or it reflects a story that I tell. And so I want to talk a little bit. You might be wondering, what does this have to do with the family? Well, it has a lot to do with that, and that's because a lot of times we have physical scars that are on the outside, and everybody gets to see those most of the time, and you have an opportunity to tell your story about it. But they're also the ones that are in here. Right? And these are the ones that are a lot easier to hide. We can ignore them or try to, but they're there. And in fact, most of the time, there are scars, but I would argue that a lot of times we carry wounds there that we can't see. And you got to remember, right? A scar doesn't just happen if you get a little scrape. That just heals. Happens all the time. I'm super clumsy. I've always got something going on that way. But when you get something deep, that's when you get a scar. Now, I'll tell you more about that later, about kind of where we should take that. But when you think about it, the story you tell about your scar is a testimony to that event and to that healing. And it's really an opportunity. Do you tell the story in a way that's about what's been lost, what's been changed, what you don't expect, and how it's limited you or held you back? Or is it an opportunity to say, man, this happened, and look how God has walked with me through this, how I've changed, and how I've been challenged, and how I've grown, and in many cases, like my story, how I've been healed. I want you to think about that because we're going to talk about family, because I think that's a lot of times where this goes off the rails and it gets real. So there's a story in the Bible. It would take, days to cover all of it. You might have heard about these two brothers of the Old Testament, Jacob and Esau, right? Most of you might know the story. We're going to hit some of the highlights because these are two brothers who had some issues that didn't get resolved. So there were wounds that they were carrying, and it led to a very interesting life that it has a pretty good ending. We'll get there, but I'm going to cover just a few highlights so that we can get the basics, and then I want to tell you a little bit more about my story. So let's start Genesis chapter 25, and we're going to look in verse 27. Pull my Bible closer because the font is smaller than I remember it being. I know, that's weird, right? It just happened suddenly. I was always like, everyone says that, but I'm going to be able to see forever. Nope. All right. Genesis 25, verse 27. We're talking about early in the boys' lives. It says, the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country. Like, whenever I read that, I'm like, ugh, right? And while Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. Now, Isaac, the father, had a taste for wild game and loved Esau. But Rebekah, the mom, loved Jacob. So I want to say at a very young age, there was already some favoritism going on, right? And if you know, that doesn't always work well with siblings when there's favoritism that way, and it can cause some problems. We'll see that come again a little bit later. And in fact, as they're growing up, you can, based on their description, it wouldn't be surprising when we turn over a couple of chapters to verse 27 that, wrong one. How did I miss that one? All right. It's right next to me. There you go. All right. In the next verse, I read the wrong note. That's how you can tell that I don't do this often. Usually by now, my youth sermon would be done. That's why I stumbled there. So don't worry. I'm not easily fazed. We're good. All right. So there was favoritism at birth. Next, you might remember this spot because it's right in the next section, that Jacob is cooking some stew while Esau is out hunting, and he comes in hungry, right? And it says in verse 29, once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. And Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. Okay, by the way, this is probably one of the first recorded times when somebody was hangry in the Bible. You do some crazy things, right? I'm about to die. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob, and then Jacob fed him. Now, I want to tell you, if you aren't aware, that birthright was the Bekorah, and that was a physical and legal entitlement that went to the firstborn. Short version is that it guaranteed the oldest son a double portion of the father's estate and property, and it established the son as the head of the family and having leadership over the territory and siblings and all of their possessions. So it was really important, and Jacob basically bought it for a bowl of stew. Pretty, I was going to say smart, but pretty Machiavellian thing to do, right? All right, so what happens next? Well, there's a few things. We're going to jump ahead. Now we can go to chapter 27. So we're going to fast forward. Jacob has basically swindled Esau out of the birthright, and now Isaac's getting old, and he wants to give the blessing, and that's the barakah. That's a formal, prophetic bestowal of divine favor, and that would set a son apart as the carrier of the family's spiritual destiny, God's promises, and future prosperity. So it was basically what was left for Isaac to be able to give to whoever he wanted. It didn't have to be the firstborn, and he wanted it to go, in this case, to the firstborn, Esau. In verse 27, or chapter 27, this is what it says. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son, here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat so I may give you my blessing before I die. Well, if you don't know what happens next, we're not going to read it, but Rebekah, his wife, tells Jacob, the son, this is happening, and they devise a plan to trick Isaac into blessing Jacob instead of Esau. It's an interesting story, right? So then when we get later in the chapter to verse 33, we get to see the response of Isaac and Esau, and this is important. Isaac trembled violently and said, in verse 33, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too, my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me these 2 times. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. And then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? After that, Jacob flees, and Esau, in verse 41, declares that he held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. And he said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, and then I will kill my brother Jacob. So, quick summary of a really long story. 2 brothers with very different personalities growing up in a household where they have a favoritism by each parent, which clearly influences how they interact with each other, with the kids, and causes division early. Jacob, being a little bit more cunning and maybe even conniving, is able to take 2 very important things from Esau and then flee. I feel like if I were Esau, I'd be mad. I would be angry. I would want revenge. And if I were Jacob, I would definitely be hightailing it out of there. So, what happens? Well, there's a lot that happens over the next couple of chapters, some really interesting marriage situations and babies and all kinds of fun stuff like that, and some servitude and whatnot. But I want to get to when they get back together and see each other again. What does that look like? So we're going to skip ahead to chapter 32. And we're going to look about Jacob, again, moving the story along. Jacob is about to re-enter after, I don't know if I said this, 20 years away. So they've had 20 years apart, and now they're coming back together. And I don't know about you, but 20 years is a long time to have a grudge and to carry. And I think what we're going to read over the next couple of verses really shows the difference in each one of these brothers and where they were in their hearts. All right, in verse 32, verse 3, Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, this is what you're to say to my master Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban, their uncle, and have remained there until now. I have cattle and donkeys and sheep and goats, manservants and maidservants, and now I am sending this message to my Lord that I may find favor in your eyes. So, pause. He is sending a message of humility and preparing a massive gift of reconciliation. Because he knows that his brothers wanted to kill him for 20 years. He's scared. When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, we went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Uh-oh. Well, I guess he didn't care about my gift. Why would he send 400 people if I came in peace and sending an offering? So, what did Jacob do? In great fear and distress, in verse 7, Jacob divided the people who were with him into 2 groups, and the flocks and the herds and the camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, then the other one might escape. Hey, we're going to hedge our bets. Look, you can't get all of us if we separate, right? He knows that his time is coming near. And then the next thing he did, I love this part. Then Jacob prayed. Yeah, I would too. We're going to jump ahead to the prayer in verse 11 in mid-prayer. And he says, "Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." So Jacob is praying to God, imploring him for safety, but also reminding him he gave him a promise to keep him safe. Like, I believe you, and I just want to make sure I really remind you of what you told me, right? Have we ever done that? Absolutely. So what happens? Well, let's look. Chapter 33, the very beginning. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he did divide the children among Leah, Rachel, and 2 maidservants. He put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went out ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. He's still trying to show submission. This is my favorite part. Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. 20 years stewing up inside of Jacob that he had done his brother, and for that matter, his father and his family wrong. And he knew it. And while he was gone, he prospered. Yes, he worked in servitude, but he was able to do really well for himself. Enough so that when God called him to come back, he had plenty to give and to offer. But he still had that issue that he hadn't dealt with. And that was what he had done to his brother. And the way he festered with it for 20 years is, I'm sure, it built up into some just massive thing in his mind based on how he came to that meeting. And Esau, who we would think would have just as much time to stew and ruminate and dream of his revenge, he sends men, but immediately runs out to his brother, embraces him and kisses him. Somewhere, and we don't get to see this, somewhere Esau was able to find forgiveness. Remember, he got started, he should have been started as the firstborn, well, with a double portion of the estate and everything. He was supposed to have the blessing. He should have had everything set up for him, but he didn't. And he was able to make his way as well because he prospered in that time too. I don't know exactly what or why Esau decided to forgive, but the beautiful thing is both of them in their embrace wept because they both were able to release something in that moment. For Jacob, it was all of that guilt and shame that he carried. For Esau, it was releasing his brother from that and maybe reconciling. It's amazing, though, that it took 20 years. I think part of that might have been because, there weren't cell phones. There wasn't email. Heck, there wasn't even mail the way we know it. And so it was different. But I imagine that after that meeting, and we have some evidence of some stories, they went and did different things, but they have moments where they came together. I imagine that their lives were completely different at that point because at that moment, in that time, and as they walked that out, those wounds were healed. They were able to scar over, and they were able to use that to move forward and do what God had called them to do. So I want to tell you another family story. And that's my family story about my sister Jenny. Based on the time and just the scenario, I don't have a long time to tell you everything about Jenny and myself, but let me just say, when you imagine the differences with Esau and Jacob that we read about, they're not the same. I'm not a hunter, but neither was my sister. But at the end of the day, we were as different as night as day could be. We didn't get along well from the time we were little. I used to trick and manipulate her, just like Jacob did here. In fact, I just was reminded by somebody randomly the other day about a story I had told about stealing cookies from her by tricking her into thinking I was gonna beat her in a race. So I did that. There are a lot of things like that. But as we got older, we went on very divergent paths. My sister struggled with making poor decisions. She didn't always have the best choice in friends. That led her down a path to all kinds of drugs, at times not having places to live, had several children that weren't necessarily planned with multiple fathers. That comes into play in a moment. And I'll tell you what, I wasn't always the most gracious. In fact, because of a lot of these decisions, financial stealing from our parents and things, she was always needing to be bailed out and rescued. And I never wanted that. I was always determined I would make my own way and not, take from my family. And we had a lot of problems with that, with each other. I blamed a lot of the fact that we didn't have as much time with my family as I wanted, that it got in the way, that she took all of the attention. And I'll be honest with you, if that's all right, I realize now I got to a place where I actually hated my sister. I don't know if you would have asked me at the moment if I would have said that, but I did. And I found that I would actively, I would talk crap about my sister. I'd be mean. In fact, it really was something I noticed. I had a friend, a running partner. She had known a little bit about my family. And I would realize we'd go on these long runs and we would talk about life, and I would spend miles just talking about my sister, mean things, and just about how much she was taking and how frustrating it was. And I blamed so many things on her. And I remember at one point, not during a run, but one time around just a random point in the week, I remember hearing that still small voice of the Lord saying, pray for her. I remember saying, no, I'm not doing that. Nope, not doing it. Pray for her. By the way, I was not being a Christian or anything. I was at church. I think I was probably serving, doing sound on the worship team, all the stuff, right? I was outside of that situation. I feel like I was honoring God in most things, right? But not that. And I remember, because God's awesome, because he won't give up on you. I remember the voice of the Lord say to me, just stop saying mean stuff. And I was like, I'll think about it, which is better than a hard no. And then I was like, you know what? I'll try it. So I did. Went on a run with Alicia the next week or whatever, and I was able to do it. I had to think about it. I wanted to, but I didn't. And that was the first time. But then I was able to do that a few more times. I don't remember how many times, handful. And you know what? One day we're running, and Alicia says, you haven't talked about your sister in a long time. And I was like, yeah, no, the Lord convicted me. I haven't been talking about her. And she was like, oh. And it was like that moment where I realized that I had been so much more peaceful. And so I went back to the Lord and said, all right, remember when you said pray for her? Okay, I will. Started praying for my sister. 1 week later, my mom calls. Well, I got some news. What's that, Mom? We found out that Jenny has liver cancer. Oh, man, okay. But if you know my mom, it's going to be fine. Okay. Now, I didn't tell you, my sister and I were so estranged that we didn't have each other's phone number. Listen, I'm sure you could pull up your contacts right now and find a handful of people. You're like, I should have deleted their phone number. I don't talk to them. It was my sister. I didn't know where she lived. It was just bad. But God had been working on my heart, and I was able to pray for my sister at that moment. I'll tell you, there's a lot more to the story. I'd be happy to share anytime. The kids know, youth know, I am not afraid to answer questions or tell stories. It's part of who I am. It's what I'm all about. It's what I believe God has called me to do, is to share things even if they're hard, because that's how we heal, and that's a big part of this message today. But my sister went to some treatments. We were able to go with her. Found out, nope, this isn't good. It's not going to be okay. She doesn't qualify for any of the studies. The medicine that she's on, the chemotherapy is not working. We can't do a transplant. We can't do surgery. So this is terminal, and get your affairs in order. Now I'd like to tell you that my sister and I went on trips around the world, that we hung out and did art projects and, all those things, rode bikes together, and we didn't do any of that. But we exchanged phone numbers. We were able to have good conversations, spend decent time together, and we reconciled. A few months later, it was time for her to go into the hospital. She wasn't strong enough to keep going, and we knew that the time was winding down. I mentioned earlier that she had 5 children, and all of the dads were in prison. I didn't say that to belittle her, but it just tells you they had nobody. They weren't around. My mom and their mom, my sister, were the only 2. I had a moment with my sister before she passed, and yep, she did pass in that summer. I had a moment where I was able to talk with her privately with her in her room and talk to her about her kids and say, all right, Jenny, what do you want for them? How can I help you support? Now, we're different people. I already said this. I have a hard time with that. If you want to know, even today, I don't like doing things for people. I like to do things with people. I like to help you do something, but I don't want to do it for you. It's just how I am. All the way when we were little, I told this the first service, so I got to be consistent and tell you this. Anybody else, child of the 80s, remember the lucky days when you got to go to the grocery store and you got to bring home a can of concentrated juice? Anybody, right? Awesome. Minute Maid, there you go in the back. Yeah, right? And you would get home, but what did you have to do? Because no, they couldn't make it consistent. You had to find in the tiniest print possible and roll the can around like this until you could find how many cans of water you had to put in to get the ratio right. Otherwise, you put too much and it ruined, right? My sister would always ask me, Joe, how many cans? And I'd be like, read it yourself. It's on the can. I would get so frustrated with her. That's my personality. So when I had that conversation in her room, she knew that I wasn't saying, listen, I'm going to step in like you and do everything for them, but I'm going to be here to make sure they're all right. That was tough. Jenny passed. Her kids, they're still doing okay. It's not been easy. My nephew, actually, the oldest, he turns 26 today. But they live with my mom the rest of that time and were able to navigate that. But that's not the part of the story that I want to focus on as I draw that part of the story to a close. God knew what was coming with my sister, and he got my attention, tugged at me. You need to pray. No. Well, stop talking bad. I don't know. Okay, now I pray. That was such a gift because it led to my humility, to opening up to God and what he was doing so he could heal that wound inside of me so that when my sister passed, that it would leave a scar and that I could stand up here and tell you the story of how my sister is in heaven. We reconciled, and I didn't have to live with the fact that if my sister passed and I didn't even know where she lived, it was my fault and I should have done something. That was a gift from God. Friday, I was in my office at home, working from home on Friday. Massive presentation I have to do week after next in Denver. Big. Been stressing me out. I've been spending hours and hours on it. I'm working on it on Friday. And actually the night before on Thursday, right before youth group, my mom had texted me. She's in a nursing facility, getting over some things and doing well. But she texted me, man, my leg hurts today. Really hurts. I'm hoping they'll do an x-ray. How are you? I said, I'm all right. I'm stressed. About to go to youth group. Everything okay? She's like, yeah, you go to youth group. I'll be all right. Okay, Mom. We have a great youth group. Man, we got to see that same worship set. I was on my knees. It was amazing. Next day, I'm in my office Friday, I'm working. We get some strange texts from my mom. My wife calls. Yeah, she just went to x-ray. We're going to go check on her. My wife goes to her thing. I have a conference call. Right after the conference call ends, I text my mom, hey, Mom, how you doing? I heard you're still having a rough morning. I'm going to make my way out. I don't hear back. I'm on a phone call right before I get dressed to leave, and my wife calls. And hopefully, you know. I wish you didn't, but you know that voice. You can hear the breath, the tears, and you know something's not right. And Timmy says, we got to go. She's not okay. She's not responsive. It's been 15 minutes. They're doing CPR. They're trying to shock her back. And I'm like, it's over. Get in the car and we drive out there. My mom is with the Lord. She passed. It's tough. 48 hours ago when that happened. Lance asked me, hey, you sure you want to get up there and do the message? I said, yes. I believe that God put this message on my heart to share. And while this timing happened, that this is an opportunity to step in to tell you that things were good with my mom. I didn't have that unreconciled situation. And that brings me peace, even though it's hard. So this is what today is about. You might have wounds that you're holding on to, and they're getting all nasty. They're gross. They might have scabbed up. You think it's a scar. It's not. You got to let God open that up, and it might hurt, but that's how you get to healing. Because you probably don't get, and I don't get 20 years like Jacob and Esau got to get it right. And it doesn't mean that you become best friends and everything works, but we've got to get right. That was a gift that I got, and I am going to ask that you guys, as the worship team plays and people come up, if you've got something that you need to address in here, a scar that you don't want to look at, that nobody else can see, come and get prayer, okay? This is an opportunity to get healing so that you can get to the other side, and then you can use that scar to tell the story of God's grace, minister to your family, and be seen in the city. So if you want prayer, come now. And if you don't get up, I'm sure I'll come to you. Don't miss the time. It's right now.
Let's all stand together, church, as we're just allowing the Lord to minister to us and as we minister to each other. The more I seek you, the more I find you. The more I find you, the more I love you. The more I seek, the more I seek you, the more I find you, the more I find you, the more I love you. Don't wanna sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hand, lay back against you and breathe, feel your heartbeat. This love is so deep, it's more than I can stand. I'm melting in your peace, it's overwhelming. Oh, it's overwhelming. Oh, the more I seek you, the more I seek you, find you, Lord, the more I love you. I want to sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hand, lay back against you and breathe, feel your heartbeat. This love is so deep, it's more than I can stand. I'm melting your peace, it's overwhelming. I want to sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hand, lay back against you and breathe, feel your heartbeat. His love is so deep, it's more than I can stand. I'm melting your peace, it's overwhelming.
You know that God loves you. He is with you. And the ministry going on right now, let it keep going and go in peace, realizing that God is our great healer. He is always for us. He is always with us. And He will never leave us or forsake us. Go in peace and be blessed in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.